We're going to go ahead and start our program. Welcome everyone. My name is Julie Banner. Thank you so much for coming tonight. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Clarice and Robert H. Smith Education and Marketing Manager here at the library and museum. While you're all here, enjoy the Charles Rump photos that are located around the room. They're also available for purchase here, and the proceeds will go to the Art Acquisition Fund. Looking out into the crowd, it is so nice to see so many familiar faces. For those of you I don't know, I look forward to meeting you. I want to say thank you, a special thanks to our members. You make these extraordinary programs possible. If you're interested in membership, talk to Emily after the program and she'd be happy to help you. There are two wonderful individuals that I need to recognize for making this evening possible. A big thanks to Leanne Layden, co-founder of Secretariat for Virginia. Leanne was instrumental in bringing the sculpture to Middleburg. Also, I'd like to thank Laura Smith, wherever Laura is located, over there. Thank you, Laura. Laura is the founder of the writing, and without her, this would have never come to fruition, so thank you. Tonight, it's clear we're all here for the same purpose, remembering history and Secretariat through the stories of two incredible women. First, we'll hear from Kate Tweedy, the daughter of Secretariat's owner, who will share firsthand memories of this equine legend and the passion that surrounds him. Thanks to the endurance of these historic moments, we have a monumental sculpture to commemorate one of the greatest athletes of all times, horse or human. Following Kate, we'll hear from Jocelyn Russell, renowned sculptor of Secretariat Racing Into History and chauffeur par excellence.
Yes.
She'll share tales from the sculpture's creation and stories from the road. She has many. Jocelyn, Michael, and their dog Alice have been expertly maneuvering the sculpture around the country almost as well as Ron Turkett did Secretariat around some of the most prestigious racetracks. With that introduction, I would like to give a warm welcome to Kate Tweedy.
Some of them have negative defeat of his racing year.
The story of Secretariat is the story of a horse and the people around him who went beyond what anyone expected.
Secretariat, horse of the year!
Great sports story is always, for the most part, an underdog story. And with this great horse, that element doesn't exist as much, but certainly the horse had its own issues to get over before the Triple Crown. But it's the story of Penny and her overcoming odds, coming into a man's world and succeeding.
This story surprises you with what the woman could do who owned him, the man who trained him, the man who rode him, the groom who took care of him. All of those people went beyond what anybody thought was possible. Secretariat did something that no one thought was even conceivable.
Secretariat was not your average horse.
It's always nice to see someone get close to perfection.
The dude was such a dude. I mean, the horse was so incredible at what it did. And that was running.
They move on to the next stretch. That's Secretariat. Now up to challenge. Here comes Secretariat on the outside, getting the lead.
Secretariat is moving up on the outside and moving out the leader as they come for the end of the stretch.
Here goes Secretariat, boldly moving through between horses, getting the lead by 3 parts of a length. Secretariat on the rail. Now up to challenge for the lead. Stride for stride, head and head down the stretch they come. Forward across the track with an 1/8 of a mile to the finish. Secretariat getting the lead. It's Secretariat holding on to the lead by 2 lengths. Secretariat in front.
Penny, she knew that there was not just speed, but stamina in the bloodline of Secretariat. She had the wisdom to have hope and faith that that little colt might actually go further. And of course it did.
You really have to have a product you believe in and the determination that you can do it. And by God, I was going to do that.
You know, I think a lot of people around the horse really sensed something very special early on. You know, that first race when he lost, I think not so many people know there was a great expectation. They were very surprised that he came in fourth because around the workouts, around the barn, they knew he was special.
I started riding 3 months before he ran his first race. The first time I put my saddle on him and galloped him around, it was a little bit hard pulling horse. Eventually he got going real nice. After the first few times I started working him. I told Lucian Laura and I You got a racehorse in your hand.
One of the most remarkable things about Secretariat is that not only did he have phenomenal natural ability, anatomically, he was almost without flaw. You couldn't pick him apart.
He was a specimen. I mean, they called him Super Horse, or the horse that God built, or the perfect horse.
He has the kind of build when he would walk into the racetrack, he could blow himself up so he would seem infinitely larger than the other horses.
He had a great golden coat, which looked like about a half a size too small, and bulging muscles. Good looking head, great jowl, deep, big, gorgeous shoulder.
You can feel all the muscle in glide, just like a plane taking off the ground.
He never just pulled out the red horse. If a camera or the press were around, he knew it. And he was aware of his sight lines and camera lines.
First look at the camera, the ears would go up. He'd swell up and pose, like, look at me, I'm the man. I mean, and he was, and he knew it. He put on a show.
They played around a lot. One day there with Eddie Sweat, he grabbed the rake and tried to pull the rake into the stall. And he had it halfway in, and Eddie grabbed the rake, and they were having a little bit of a tug of war there. Another time he did grab one of Eddie's brushes and ran to the back of the stall with it. And Eddie said, come back here, you dude, give me back my brush. And Secretary, well, he was really cute doing that.
He was not a horse, he was a human being to me. If he could have talked, oh man, he would have just tell you what he wanted to do, how he couldn't do it, and when he wanted to do it.
Charlie was telling me after he lost one of his few races that he did lose, Secretary knew it and was mad about it, but he said, you know what? Charlie said, I always thought that he thought about it.
Every time he get beat, he get in the back of the stall. He don't want to be bothered. He be thinking. I said, what do you be thinking about? Every time he get beat, he come back. In his next race, then he set a record.
Sure enough, every next time he ran, he did break the track record. That's a fact.
And they're on. Lo and behold, he lost the Wood Memorial on the eve of the Kentucky Derby, which ultimately was the greatest thing that ever happened. And plus, there was a real good horse out there named Sham. And I thought, I just don't know if he can beat Sham. I have to admit that coming up to the Kentucky Derby and Newsday, I picked Secretariat to finish third. On the day of the Derby, the horse leaves the gate.
On the rock.
He's dead last.
On the inside, that triangle line for the lead. On the outside, Shecky Green.
He starts circling the field slowly around the first turn.
On the outside, Novel. Followed by Secretariat. Warbuck. Finally, twice the print.
Down the back stretch and around the far turn, he's moved up and he's flying on the outside. You can see those white and blue silks. And I'm thinking, man, he's back.
Secretariat is fourth and moving up on the outside and is now third and moving at the leaders as they come toward the head of the stretch.
When he started picking up horses, and when he took them home and run in, I said, well, you got this one.
They're at the head of the stretch and Sham is the leader. He leads it by a length.
He hooks Sham and they run head and head together, and we're all screaming up in the press box. The place was delirious.
Down there in the stretch, it's Secretariat. Sham holding in second. It's Secretariat moving away. He has it by 2.5.
Then he pulls away to win the fastest Kentucky Derby in history, 1:59.2. And the remarkable thing he did that day is he ran every quarter mile in that Derby faster than the preceding quarter. He literally went faster and faster throughout the Kentucky Derby. He was going 36 miles an hour past the stands the first time, and 39 miles an hour going past the stands the second time.
The fact that Secretariat would always be at the back and enjoy the experience of passing everybody, that was something to behold.
Secretariat pops his head. They're still looking, and they're off. Rory on the lead, that Deadly Dream on the outside, a Coley-Taj. Then it's also Torsion on the outside. As they pass the stands, the Secretariat is last again.
At the first turn, he was last. Circled the field, and by the time they came out of the turn, he was in front of the whole field.
That's the way that the horse ran. He came in from behind, and boom.
Sham under an easy hold right now, but here comes Secretariat. He's moving fast, and he's moving to the outside. He's moving for the lead, and it's right now he's looking for it. Ronnie Kirkhoff sends him alongside a Coley-Taj. Here we have it. A Coley-Taj is the leader, but Sham under Secretariat is right alongside.
He's in the previous. I ain't never seen him jump and take off that fast. He just make one leap and said, take me to the outside. He said, that's right.
There's no words. It's something magical when Secretariat turned it on. You're just awestruck at what he could decide to do.
Here comes Sham second on the outside now. Now it's Secretariat leader by a length and a half with Sham moving into second.
Sham, That was the horse that beat.
The horse was great, but he just meant something greater.
They're on the turn, here's the race, folks. Secretariat trying to hold it, and Sham is driving to get him.
He expected to win. He had taken his career entirely into his own hands.
2.5. Sham under a strong left-handed whip, and he's making the run now, but it's still Secretariat holding on.
He loved to run. He just picked his legs up and just went out and he grabbed the earth and just kept running. Powerful horse.
The running turn by half a foot away, and Secretariat has him overweight. He's beginning to run away. It is Secretariat.
Secretariat won the first 2 races in record time. It wasn't just that he won them. He won them faster than any other horse had ever run them.
When he won the Derby in track record time, it got everybody's attention. Then when he duplicated that performance in the Preakness, it was like, wow, look at here. And then leading up to the Belmont, I think he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated and Time and Newsweek, and you just hoped and prayed that he wouldn't stub his toe, because it was just such a great story. Let this go on and be completed, and then for him to go on and do what he did in the Belmont, it was jaw-dropping. It truly was.
And so we come up to the day of the Belmont, sun's just coming up. Little pony girl was taking care of her pony, and she rattled a bucket on the wall, and the secretary heard that, and he went up in the air, and he started walking around. He was pawing at the sky like this. He comes down, and he's dancing. He's on like a dressage horse on springs, and his nostrils are flared, and his eyes are big and round, and he's snorting. He literally pranced into a stall, and I thought to myself, oh my God, what are we going to see out there today?
The outside horse, and we're ready to go for this tremendous Belmont Stakes. Everybody's in line, and they're off. Looks like the early lead goes to Mike Gallen. Yes, Mike Gallen going for the lead with Price and Prince on the outside. Secretariat away very well, has good position on the rail, and in fact is now going up with the leader.
When they broke, and the Secretary didn't hang back, and he moved right along from his inside post, and then Sham engaged him, and Sham even edged ahead. Part of me thought, well, Sham, you've been a gallant horse. If you can do this, I'm all for you.
Those two together, Sham on the outside. Sham getting ahead in front as they move around the turn with Secretariat second. Then there's a large gap, make it 8 lengths.
Anyone who was familiar with horse racing said, what are they doing? They're cooking each other. I mean, neither one of them can win this.
They're on the backstretch. It's almost a match race now. Secretariat's on the inside, Maya ahead. Sham is on the outside.
It's kind of tragic to me to think about Sham. He's the only contender up until the moment when Secretariat just decided to defy the lead.
And we're on the turn now. We're on the turn of Secretariat. It looks like he's opening. The lead is increasing. Make it 3.5. He's moving into the turn. Secretariat holding on to a large lead.
I remember thinking, oh no, he's going too fast.
Secretariat is cruising on. It's
3/4 and 109. There's champion horses today who sprint that have trouble going that fast just running a 6 furlong race, much less to do that and then still keep going for another 3/4 of a mile. I mean, it's just unreal.
Secretariat is fighting now. He is moving like a tremendous machine. Secretariat by 12. Secretariat by 14 lengths on the turn. He's out there almost a 1/6 of a mile away from the rest of the horses.
When he shook off the other horses and was clearly in the lead, that's when it got surreal. He said, I have won your race. Now I'm going to show you what I can do on a mile and a half track.
He kept picking up speed, and he hit the finish line 31 lengths ahead of all the other horses. It's almost impossible to believe.
To be on the horse when it's doing that, I just, to be one with Secretariat in that moment of history. Ronnie Turcotte was elevated to the status of first man on the moon is that archetypally untouchable.
That race was really sort of supernatural.
That horse was doing something that horses just can't do. He's left a mark as a legend. Since I was a kid and since he had ran, all we talk about is Secretariat. You know, if a big horse wins a race, it's like, well, he's not as good as Secretariat.
There's never been any horse that could even warm Secretariat up as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I've seen some really good horses since then, but none like him. With each passing running of the Triple Crown, you realize more and more how special he was.
Unfortunately, nobody lives forever, and in his autopsy, of course, it was found his heart. Of course, metaphorically, it was twice the size, but biologically.
They found that his heart was well over twice as big as any horse's heart they'd ever seen, which is a kind of fitting metaphor for him.
After he died, I made a mission to try and keep his legacy alive because he was such an outstanding horse, and I really just care for my horse so much that I've just kept honking his horn.
And the great thing about us getting to make movies is that we get to make Secretariat in some ways live on.
Secretariat will be remembered for generations. He's immortal now.
So many emotions bringing this story to the screen, and I think the most touching one, the one that will linger in my heart the most, is that Penny could be there. It's just amazing to me that Penny could enjoy this.
The common reaction is to love what he did, which we couldn't have forced or created for him. He just picked his moment and just ran because he was loving it.
Okay, so cool. Okay, so obviously Secretariat, greatest racehorse of all time, in my opinion. So Leanne, my co-author, and I, in 2007, set out to say, well, how did this happen? I always felt, you know, that we were just unbelievably blessed, but how did it happen? So we dug into the story, and that was Secretariat's Meadow, our book. It began at the Meadow in Doswell, Virginia, which was my grandfather's great aunt's farm before the Civil War, and it was lost after the Civil War. But he learned to ride there and learned to really love horses. And of course, he was a horseman from the beginning. He was very proud of being a Virginian, but also he played polo, he hunted to hounds, anything to do with a horse, he loved. You can see him, and he hunted with the Deep Run Hunt Club in Richmond when he was there, and he lived in New York. He went to New York to make his fortune, because, you know, 1920 in Virginia, the opportunities were not extensive. And he made a fortune and came back in 1936. He had a heart attack and had to quit playing polo and hunting. So what did he do? He founded a horse stable in breeding and racing farm in Doswell, Virginia. This was the old house that had belonged to his great-great aunt, and he restored it. And then he built up a stable that was based on broodmares. You know, at that time, now it's, I think, commonly understood that the mare is as important, but back then, really people thought, oh, it's really all the sire. But he and his farm manager believed that the mare done it, was their phrase. And so he bought inexpensive but well-bred mares and developed a very well-regarded stable. This is his favorite picture of the mamas and babies grazing in a sort of a low area of the farm that we called the Cove. So he, of course, dreamed of winning the Kentucky Derby. He came close 4 times. Hill Prince, 1950, was on favorite but came in second. He won the Preakness and was Horse of the Year, but missed the Derby. First Landing, 1959, was also a betting favorite, but he came in third. Sir Gaylord, 62, broke his sesamoid the day before the race, couldn't run. He retired to England and became a eminent sire. He was the sire of Sir Ivor. And then Cicada that same year was our filly, who was really she was the top money-winning filly for about 7 years before Chouvy took over. She won the Oaks. So, you know, we came close. But by the 60s, Granddad was mid-60s. He was getting senile. He was in his 80s. And he sort of gave up hope that anything like that would happen. Well, now to Mom. She grew up a tomboy, loving horses and dogs. That was, you know, everything, and her dad, and the meadow. I mean, that was really, she went to Madeira, nearby, and was the head of the equestrian team there. Went to Smith, took her horse to Smith, you know, was on the equestrian team there. But eventually, she just was not that interested in doing what was expected of her, although she was very dutiful. But so after Smith, she went with the Red Cross to Europe and was a donut girl, which is to say they welcomed the troops who were leaving the trenches and coming about ready to get shipped home. And that was where she met a wide range of people and began to feel that, you know, if you were all horse lovers, then you had something in common. It wasn't later when she was an owner, she was not holding herself apart. She wanted to share the great joy of racing with everybody. She came back from the war and her dad said to her, well, you have no skills and therefore you are, you know, what are you? You have no function in society. So she said, okay. And she went to, started the MBA program at Columbia, learned, and she was very ambitious and smart and really took herself seriously. She'd been, you know, good schools, taught to think. But then she is the 50s, she meets my dad. They fall in love, they get married, and she's just become a housewife from then on, which was not her. She was a great athlete, skied, continued to hunt. We went camping, we did all kinds of things, but she was actually really bored. She needed to be in charge of something from the word go. And something way more challenging. So, in 1968, my grandmother died very suddenly, and Granddad had been going downhill. Grandmother had been sort of keeping him, you know, on target, but with her gone, he really declined quickly, and someone needed to take over the stable, and Mom leapt at the chance. She just, it was what she'd been waiting for her whole life. The opportunity to do something like that that was challenging, that had to do with horses, that had to do with fulfilling her father's legacy. This was, you know, sort of a dream come true. But it was not easy. And she knew horses, but she didn't know horse racing. So first of all, she's commuting between New York, where Granddad lived, the meadow near Doswell, and where we lived in Denver. And she's reading every time. From then on, I never saw her without a trade journal or horse magazine, Chronicle of the Horse. I mean, everything, you know, Blood Horse, Thoroughbred Times in her hands. Thoroughbred Record then, it wasn't Thoroughbred Times. But the stable was a little bloated, it was in the red, and so Mom started, you know, culling the herd and doing pretty well. We had a few winners. Syrian C was a full sibling to Secretariat and did pretty well, but her siblings were against it because they thought, this is his dream, he's no longer aware. Let's put the money in the market and move on. And she's saying, no, this is his dream, these are his horses, we have no right. So as long as he was alive, they had her on a tight leash, but they said, okay, you can keep the experiment going. And then in 1972, she breeds our homebred, Riva Ridge, wins $500,000 in the fall of '71, and then in '72 wins the Derby and the Belmont, loses the Preakness on a very muddy day like we just had up there in Saratoga, and suddenly her siblings are on board, right? They're saying, oh, okay, we could do this. But so she proved that a woman could be at the helm of a stable. Now clearly there'd been other women owners, many, but she was so involved, she was really hands-on. She was at every workout at 5 a.m., you know, and so she was probably one of the very first women really in charge of a stable in that way. So that, you know, that proved a lot. And I think she felt almost that she had fulfilled all her dreams at that point. Granddad was still alive. He had not spoken or walked, and so, but they made sure the nurses who were caring for him had the TV on for the Derby, for Reva's Derby, and it was, 5:30 and the nurse is feeding him, and she says, Mr. Cherny, your horse just won the Kentucky Derby. And his hand fluttered up and tears came down his eyes. So we knew he knew, and that was enough for Mom. I mean, that really made her feel like she had done everything she had set out to do. But waiting in the wings was this gorgeous 2-year-old who had not yet raced at that point, would surpass all of our dreams and our visions. So Secretariat stood out from the very first. And his 2-year-old year was so impressive that he stole the title of Horse of the Year from from Riva Ridge. So Riva won the Belmont and the Derby and lost the Horse of the Year title to his and 2-year-olds don't win Horse of the Year title, but so then Granddad dies in January of Secretariat's 3-year-old year before he does his Triple Crown races. And estate taxes were very high, and the most valuable things in our barn were Secretariat Riva Ridge, and so we couldn't have sold the farm and all the other horses and made up enough money to pay the taxes. So she had to syndicate them, but she was very savvy and syndicated them to a breeding, of course syndicate both of them, but she retained the right to race them through that 3-year-old year. And the movie implies there's a performance clause, meaning if she lost a race she had to return the money. No, she said, no, I'm going to run the races, I will be in charge, I make all the decisions, and I keep the purses. And they agreed. Because everybody knew that if he did fulfill his promise, the gamble would be so much worth it. He would be worth so much more. It was still a very big ticket, $190,000, which, years later, one single share was sold for $500,000. So it was actually a very safe bet. She did turn down $7 million, an offer of $7 million. She got 6.08. She turned down a $7 million offer from an Irish consortium who would have taken him to Europe, and he would never have raced in our classic races. And number one, she wanted to be able to do that, but also she thought it was not fair to the American public, really, to do that. So, but her gamble really paid off. And then, of course, as we just saw, he just demolished the competition. And one of the things that's so interesting, Time Magazine said this first, but it's continued to be true. If you add up all the times in the 3 races for each of the Triple Crown winners, he is still 6 seconds ahead of the nearest, which just tells you how far above Head and Shoulders. And I love it when Mom got to, one of the last trips she ever made was to the 2015 Belmont, because she really wanted to see American Pharoah. And so she, he wins the Belmont, and she's sitting there, and, someone says to her, wow, what do you think? And, oh, a great horse, but his time. So he retired a stud, and a lot of people don't know that he still has a very significant impact on the breed. He, both American Pharoah and Justify were his. His daughters produced the great sires, AP Indy, Gone West, Stormcat, from whom many horses, champions have descended. But he also, most, like Leanne keeps track every year in the classic races, about 2/3 to 3/4 are Secretariat descendants, even today. And of course, we saw that gorgeous Secretariat descendant out there today. And about his heart, it was 22 pounds. They discovered that he got it from his mother, and she got it from her father, and Prince Quilla was the one who had the great stamina. So that has now developed a whole equine cardiology, equine cardiology specialty of identifying the big hearts both in utero and in young horses, which of course guarantees nothing, but it gives you a chance, right? And of course, because it's a female-linked trait, Granddad was right. The mare done it. Not that he knew why, but he was right. So of course, people lay roses on his grave still. His grave is at Claiborne. And of course, as you know, there's still legends in the horse industry. But now we have this gorgeous statue that Jocelyn will tell you all about. And it is destined for Ashland, Virginia. Well, and I was talking to a few others, you know, we are overdue for celebrating our greatest equine athlete. And I'm sure some of you will say, well, he's not the greatest equine athlete, because we have some great horses up here, and obviously you do, but bear with me, he's our greatest equine athlete. So we need a statue here, and so we have created this opportunity to bring him to Virginia, and it's going to be in Ashland. Now, Ashland is a small town right on 95. It's the nearest town to the Meadow, which was where he was born. It's where Granddad grew up. It's where he went to college. It's where he and all his parents, my great aunt Marguerite Archambault, and Mom are all buried. And it's where I live. And it's, you know, it's a community that really claims him. And here we had a wonderful unveiling on April 1. The statue came into town. The town square was thronged. People, you know, have been streaming to see it everywhere it's gone. And Jocelyn will tell you a little bit about the tour. But I do want to tell you we have brochures out there, and if there are any people interested in major donations, I have more information for you. We are so close, but we need, we've had a lot of support. We've had major foundations, we've had individuals, we've had small donations, big donations, but we need more. We need about 200,000 more, and we are so close. But we feel like we are really, really there, and it's going to be such a treasure for Virginia and for both the Central Virginia community, and as a way to illustrate the great horse history that sometimes gets overlooked when people think it's all Kentucky, when really it all started here. And we need to tell that story, and Secretariat's part of telling that story. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for having me here. This is really amazing, and like I said, I am really going to zip through this. Some of the things I'm going to talk to you about, Kate's already talked about, but I'm going to give you a brief overview of how I made the monument and then the tour. The first one was commissioned by Triangle Foundation in Lexington, and it's been installed in 2019, and we had a chance to do 2 in the addition. I think I really want to step over here so I can see what I'm talking about, because I'm visual. But we decided to customize this one for a number 2. Fast facts, you guys maybe read the sign out there. He's life and a half, 21 foot long, 11 and a half feet tall, 3,800 pounds, and he's hollow. Not hollow of heart. And so we are slated for Virginia. Now, Kate and I are doing different presentations, so we aren't always doing it at the same time, the same building, and so this one was geared for a presentation in Colorado. My mother was an amazing artist. That's me in the top right, and on at the bottom left, I was 2 or 3 years old, the same painting. I inherited it, and I did work for a veterinarian for 14 years. And I had a cattle ranch for 15 years. And I've done some pretty big pieces. See how fast I'm going? I have to go fast. So my foundry man, this was Audubon elephants, went to New Orleans at the zoo, and my foundry man said, "Don't you dare get on the elephant." But if you can see the ladder down there, what do you think's going to happen? Now he ran out screaming at me, "I told you not to get on the elephant." Wait, get my camera. And he took that photo. So this one's 17 feet tall. I did this little mare for the Marines, Sergeant Reckless, if you guys know about Sergeant Reckless. Robin here in the blue commissioned me to do that. The first time I met Robin was in 2011, 2012. She's been installed in 6 places, including the World Equestrian Center, which is just an incredible honor. So when I was talking to Robin, and we were going to the race tracks, and I was like, man, I'd really love to get a life-size racehorse commission. And she was installing Reckless at the Kentucky Horse Park with Ted Bassett. If you don't know Ted Bassett, he's turning 102 in October. And he is Mr. Kentucky. He's amazing. And he said, my buddy Alec needs a Secretariat monument. What do you think? That's not me. Life and a half, are you kidding? And so, of course, you know all about Secretariat and Ron, so I'm going to zip through a lot of these. Charisma was the word that kept ringing through the project. So I started with a small wire armature, very small, what I call a sketch in clay. I had all my anatomy reference, and I was working in my shop. I live in Friday Harbor, Washington, sorry. I don't do all these little preliminaries, but my husband is here somewhere, Michael.
He's around.
He's in the back.
There he is.
I'm from Colorado. I met him 24 years ago. He goes, Colorado's beautiful, but I'm not moving. And he's a San Juan Island boy, so I live on San Juan Island. So this is where our shop is. And let me tell you, to get to the East Coast to do anything here is a ferry ride and a bus ride, to get to the airplane, to get to the East Coast, which is already 3 hours later. So the trips coming back and forth are very interesting. So I started the miniature and clay at my shop, and then we got on a plane. I think I did about 25 trips with this project for the maquette alone. The first time I met Leanne and Kate showed up, which was amazing. We're fast friends. I think we're sisters. Yeah. Michael's going to tell me slow down. Huh? Oh, no. Went to the foaling shed. I'm all about research. I spent 4 months doing just the research. Got to see his yearling stall. To me, if I can go right where he has been and talk to anybody that's touched the horse, who knows about the horse, it's all in the collective. I take as many photos as I can. I get back to my space and I try to bring it all into the most important part, which is the miniature, the maquette, which will eventually be the monument. So this again is Robin Hutton on the right. She commissioned Reckless. She's been following us along. She's been on the Triple Crown Tour. She's amazing. She's getting a documentary of Sergeant Reckless. Woo! You guys watch for it. Went to his gravestone. This is very powerful to me, to have my hand on his gravestone and my other hand over his organic mass. So I had a chance to go visit Ron, and Robin says, I'll go with you. Yay. So we rented a car, and we drove across the border, met Ron in his hometown, and he says, want to ride out to my house? I said, yes. And I got in his van, a big red van, and the license plates were big red. And I'm riding out to Ron Turcotte's house with Ron Turcotte. And he walked us through all of the races. We took 20 minutes of video that's never been released. But he actually said, okay, I have to manually advance this, I think. He actually told me what he was asking the horse to do and what the horse was just doing on its own. And that was really amazing to me. I measured everything that he had in his, yeah, I mean teeny tiny boots. He said, Gaetan, go get the saddle. And I went, are you kidding me? So I've never been able to talk about this because that saddle and the girth strap were in his private collection in his home. And they live alone and they're very vulnerable. And so anytime I did a presentation, I would just gloss over it and act like it was at a museum. It was actually at the house. And I love his wife, but she's like, I am not gonna go get that saddle. Okay. So I didn't get to see the saddle. But he gave me a lot of pointers, and I took my purse strap, I put it in his hand, and you can see his fingers. I said, show me how you held the reins. So then back at the studio, I just start cutting out the maquette. Now the maquette that I did the enlargement was 28 inches hoof to hoof. And so I measured, there's a workout pose in the upper left, and I blew that up to 28 inches hoof to hoof, and I could do all of the comparative measurements of the joints and his thickness, his neck, his head length, because that photo was basically broadside, so it was very accurate. And that's my horse in the background. I called my sister, I said, I need a skull of a horse, and she goes, well, I have your horse that died, and I said, send it to me. The FedEx drivers are like, what are you getting today? I'm like, I don't know, it's probably a horse skull. I don't know. So there's little Ronnie in wax against clay, and then on a plane again. So I ordered up this little roller bag. I thought, Secretariat Blue, I'll put the little white checkers on it. This is going to be fun, and I'll see it when it comes off the belt, right? And then I cut them up so that I could disassemble them and fit them into that, because he was 28 inches long. That's too long for a roller bag. But all the legs and his head and Ronnie came off. And once again, 25 trips with this. And I reassemble them everywhere I went. This is our assistant, Kristen. I said, he's missed the plane. I think we were flying to Colorado, and the suitcase did not show up. But it did later. So I was doing a workshop in Colorado with her, and my sister's cabin was about a block away from the workshop. And I get back to her cabin and look at the back leg is missing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what happened to it. And we ran back out, and it was literally laying in the street. But this is Creede, Colorado. There's not a lot of traffic. So, this is a veterinarian that I worked for 14 years, and I just love him to pieces. We lost him just after I got the maquette done. But he used to call me Jose. He said, good job, Jose. I got it in front of Bob Baffert's veterinarian, and then I got it in front of Bob. Because I just figured, you know, the more people that are in the industry that can give more input, the better. We were just in Saratoga, and D. Wayne Lucas got, he was honored with the Hall of Fame. I don't know what's the title of it? Trainer?
National Racing Museum Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame, yeah. And then, of course, we got him to Dell Hancock. She was wonderful. That was 45 minutes with Dell at Claiborne Farm. She says, I don't really know what he looked like when he was racing, but I'll give a critique. So when you travel with me, like, ma'am, could you just open up your bag? What is that? I'm like, it's a little Ronnie Turcotte. Flies with me everywhere for free. And then, of course, remember, everything comes apart, so his head came off, and I could work on that. So now I'm back at the studio again in Washington, and I'm starting the saddlecloth and trying to perfect Ronnie a little bit more. Then I get back on the plane and take him to Ronnie again for the second time. And this time, and his wife, Gaetan, because Ronnie's not mobile, she had gotten a kitchen roller cart and a sleeping bag and rolled it up and set the saddle on it for us. And I'm sorry, I'm going to indulge you because I just did this, I tweaked this PowerPoint last night. I'm like, I cannot get enough photos of this actual saddle. This is Ronnie in the background. You can see his legs there. And I was measuring, and I could never share this before because the saddle has since sold. It's in the Jim Irsay collection. He owns the Colts. And I think it sold for $2.2 million. So it's out of Ronnie's home. And I just love the fact, I mean, he's showing me right here where the weights go. And it's Ron Turcotte. I just, coolest thing. And the girth strap. Yay, Kate. And back again with Dell. You can see how many trips I made. Dell said, you want to come see my geldings? I go, you bet. So Dell is actually holding the camera here and videotaping me playing with her horse's nostril. Yeah, so I did have the maquette in hand, and I did love that photo. She said Doc Copeland was his track veterinarian, who's now, I think he's 94. And she said, he's in town right now. She goes, I'll just give him a ring. I'm in her car, and she rings him up. Can Jocelyn come in? And there we are. And so I got the critique from him as well. He goes, you even got the suspensory ligaments. I go, that's great. What are those? Because, you know, I have the anatomy magazine. I don't really pay attention to the names of everything. I just see it and I feel it. And I go see the horses and I touch the horses, and I'm like, oh, there's a tendon there. And so now I'm back at my Airbnb in Norman, Oklahoma. Now this monument was cast in Norman because they have the ability to do something really big. And I wanted to just land there with the maquette. I didn't want to ship him. And my little Airbnb gal, she was so amazing. I said, now, she goes, half the refrigerator's yours. I said, well, in the morning you might find a little man refrigerator. Because the clay is soft, it's oil-based, and if it gets too warm, my fingerprints, I'll just put them in the fridge, sometimes the freezer, and then I can work on them. That's just a photo off of the wall in my Airbnb. I just love the reflection. So the maquette's done. So this one is the one that's 28 inches hoof to hoof, and I did go ahead and cast him in bronze. I have that size, and then I have an 18-inch size, which we have one here, Michael? We do have the small one. I forgot. It's in the truck.
And they are for sale.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not, yeah, they are, but I mean, that's not the reason I'm here, but I forgot that I had one out there. Obviously, I'm not good at marketing.
They make a great gift.
I forget to market, but anyhow, we did cast 2 of that size, and we're thinking about doing them at half-life size, which I think would be awesome. Is anybody totally confused yet? You're all good? Good. Nobody's sleeping? Okay, so to get from that size to this size out there is the enlargement process. I took it to the Crucible in Norman, Oklahoma. I was going to do it with my foundry in Colorado. And they said, no, something like this needs to go to Norman. I'm like, I don't know these guys. I have a horse on deadline, and it's Secretariat. And it's like starting a relationship. It's like a marriage. And I'm taking this project to someone else that I mean, you can't mess me up on the deadline. You can't mess me up on the details. But they didn't, just saying they didn't. So they scan him, and this is a computer rendition of the scan of the clay maquette. And those surfaces go into a CNC computer program. And you can mill it at any size. I specified 100 inches from the bottom of the hoof to the top of the shoulder, which is approximately 1.5. So I started getting foam pieces milled. Now, if you look closely at the strap along his, and the cups around his eyes, very, very blurry, which is what, if you take an 8 by 10 inch photo and blow it up to 8 by 10 feet, you're gonna get blur. So I took a 28 inch and went to 21 feet. And then I had to go back in and cut all the detail back into the clay. And I just used my regular sculpting tool to do that. And you can see all the pieces that are involved that have been milled. Some of them have been partially assembled. I was getting very attached to Ron at this point. So this is when my husband Michael and my assistant Kristen that you saw on the airplane came in. They flew into Norman, Oklahoma and started helping me. So it was basically 4 months for the research and the creation of the maquette, and then they had time to enlarge it, and then I came in and I spent another several months sculpting. So now he's assembled in foam. We just wanted to make sure that he was proportionate. Of course, with the computer program, he would be. But it's really fun to see him go up. Now I see how big he is, which is still not that scary. But and this is my original boss, came in just to double check, make sure I was working. I'm working. I'm doing it. And then Robin from Sergeant Reckless came in. She says, I have to do the tail, and then she always says, but you always have to fix it, and I did. And there's Kristen and Michael working on Ronnie. All the details around the straps and the helmet and Ronnie's, everything on Ronnie basically was up to Michael and Kristen. I was there the whole time, but I was really very focused on Secretariat. So he's in the background here. But the detail that had to go in that no one's really going to see when he's that high in the air, but you know it's there. So this was the fun thing I did with Ron. I said, I'm going to send a little chunk of clay to you, and I'd like for you to sign it. You can see the rectangle there. Just sign it something within this space, and then send it back to me. And I'll try to incorporate it into the monument. Meanwhile, now I've got all the detail on the foam. I'm starting to paint on hot clay, which is like melted chocolate. It's oil-based. I'm talking. I need to go faster. We fill in the seams in the back. I'm working on leg parts. Kristen's in the back. Kristen did the first layer of just clay just to seal the foam. This is our James Bond photo, and she's given him a drink of water. Steve Palmerton was one of the foundry guys. He had the duty of getting Ron on the back of Secretariat with a forklift, and he just slid him in like a jet airliner. And that was a thrift store belt that I tied to give me some reference for the knot. And here comes Ronnie's box back. So I just blended in all the lines, and he does have his signature on the right boot of the monument. Michael gets a lot of credit. It's my friend Jamie. I said, what does this look like at 40 miles an hour? And so we worked on that for a while. And then I'm like, well, I don't think anyone else is going to know either, so let's just call it a draw. So I did ask everybody. Michael was assigned to the irons, and he made it too big. And he was very sad. But then he got them right. And that was our last photo before we disassembled. Are you guys staying up with me? Yes. Wow, I see no nodding heads. He says to go faster, and usually he says go slower. So now the foundry guys come in, and this is the really brutal part because they completely come in dissecting him like he's at a butcher shop, but that's what they have to do. They have to do it. I mean, you can't cast him in one piece. So I just leave it up to them. I don't want to own a foundry. I don't want to be married to a foundry, but I sometimes am. So this is, part of the horse was cast in lost wax method, which means a rubber mold around the extremities, Ronnie, the head. The side panels were cast in sand cast because they can cast huge pieces because they're big and basically flat. Then they take this mold, they call it the mother mold, and they pour a wax out of it. Now you can see the wax is hollow, so it's basically like a chocolate Easter bunny. And then they build a shell, they dip it into this vat, and they build a shell around that with like a silica sand powder and multiple layers, and dry it in between each layer and hang it to dry. And then they melt that wax out, and they fire the shell, and they heat up the bronze to about 2100 degrees. And Greg's taking the temperature on the left there. I mean, it's very, very, if it's too hot, it'll blow the shell out. If it's too cold, it won't go all the way through. And this is basically called a crucible, which is the name of my foundry, but that's where they pour the metal into the pour cups. And it's cooling outside. And then they hammer off the shell. This is and they end up with pieces. You can see Ronnie's hands down here. And that's called a window, the little piece that's cut out of the back of his hands, and you have to fit everything back up, plasma off all of the pour screws. And now you got the head and metal. This is the sand cast, where those were the big panels at the side of Secretariat out here. And I still don't know how they do that. And they start welding together. And you can see all these little weld lines, tacking them together. It goes together like a three-dimensional puzzle piece. It's really intricate, but at the same time, they take a sledgehammer and they beat the crap out of it just to make it fit. And that's why I don't stay there while they're doing it. I love these guys. There's only about 7 guys at the foundry, 1 woman up front. They're down and dirty and rough and tumble, but I work with them, and they made your horse out here, so they deserve a huge acknowledgement for that. I love this one. This is Scott in the belly of the monument. He was that big. the horse, not Scott. And that's Greg's foot. And Greg's butt. And you sandblast the metal, and that's what raw bronze looks like. It's a beautiful light gold. Take outside and spray on potash, darken it. Start highlighting, scrubbing out everything that you want. Beautiful red, chestnut, bronze, gold light. Now this patina, because I wasn't able to follow the process on number 2 that's out here the whole time, this was actually the one that went to Lexington, number 1. Once again, Mark says, don't you dare get up on the monument. I told Ronnie, I said, so sorry, Ronnie, but there was no other place to hold on. So here we are, and I'll try to breeze through this. Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
This was our Triple Crown tour, and I didn't want to leave it out because this is why we're here. We have been on a real whirlwind. We asked the guys to do the second one on a time frame. I didn't have a buyer for it, but I just wanted to start putting it together. So basically, I gave myself a loan and kept paying them as we went, and Michael and I ate ramen. Wait, that's an old one. Sorry, Kate.
That's okay.
Oh no, it was actually did fit in. So Kate had said, you know, we don't have one in Virginia, and we formed the team with Leanne. And Wayne's not here. Robin Hutton's here on the right. And Kevin Engel, who's next to me on the right, came up and said, I want to be part of this project. He said, my father really loves Secretariat, and he wrote a check for $10,000 to get us started, to get it here in Virginia. And we went to Ashland, and we talked to him about, you know, is there a possibility? And they all stepped up. Now that's really a quick synopsis, but it took a while. Leonard Lusky said, let's do a Triple Crown tour. It's the 50th anniversary, how amazing. So we cut the panel out and turned it into a number 2 and tried to get it done by March 30th, his birthday. Got some blue on him. And Kevin Engel, that wrote the check for $10,000, said, I'll come get him. So he drove all the way out. On the right here, he has a tank in the back of his truck full of diesel, so he just fills himself up anywhere he wants to go. He didn't even have to stop at the gas station. So we started the tour. Now this is really funny. KFAR News calls and said, we're sending out a chopper. Took him 45 minutes to catch up to us. Michael and I were flying in a little blue rental car. We were driving next to him, or behind, just driving with him. Here comes the chopper flying up next. I go, the chopper's coming, the chopper's coming. I get up next to him, and they said, yeah, they even said there were people driving next to the monument, taking a picture of the monument. And I go, that was me. Taking a picture of you, taking a picture of us. So we got Robin on the left, Kristen, our assistant, Michael and me, and of course Alice Margaret, who got lame today, but she might make a cameo tonight. The guys were speeding ahead of us, and Michael says, I can't catch up to him, I can't catch up to him. Well, Kevin was doing like 80 miles an hour with our monument, but we did it in a couple days, and we made it to Virginia on his birthday. And of course, the Ashland event was amazing. And we got him on the road. We took him to Churchill. And he was the Grand Marshal for the parade. And of course, the dog stuck her head out the window and stole the show. We were on the red carpet at the Derby. And Kate was talking about the trophies that are with the traveling museum exhibit. People showed up. I don't know how many thousands of photos. Hundreds of thousands have been taken with them. We stopped at the Shenandoah Downs, and then we went back to visit Ronnie because they were doing a 50-year celebration for him in his hometown. And he loved our dog. And we went to his house and did some signing. Back to the Preakness. Do you guys know how many flights were taken now? And we got him set up at the Preakness. And Michael was having a terrible time. I mean, we were in the winner's circle. They were letting us everywhere. And the Buellers came down and did a call at the monument. We took him to the Baltimore County Ag, took him through the truck wash. The guys are like, I wanted to wash them. And they go, no, we wash them. I'm like, okay, well, it's Secretariat. Can you do this? I'm like, well, we've never done that before. So we get to the Verrazano Narrows Bridge going to Long Island to the Belmont, and the bridges are much lower than 13.3. Don't take the Parkway Bridge. Wow. And so I told Michael, please don't take that. We dropped down, we were in Brooklyn. And they were looking at us, like, what are you doing here? And we're like, we don't want to be here. We're just trying to get out of here. It took us about 3 hours to get to Belmont, but we made it. And of course the fires happened, and they canceled the races that first day, so we went to see the Statue of Liberty. Back at the Belmont, we're polishing them up. That's a photo. It's a great photo of just the horse, but you can take your photo by the horse. Secretariat blue. And the real saddle showed up. So this is after the saddle was purchased and was in the Ursay collection. And Alice Margaret wanted a little peek too. So this is Forte, if you can see, Forte on the right, and in the back is our monument just past the paddock. That was where we were stationed. A lot of people showed up. I don't think this is going to play. I'm going to try it. Yeah, but there's no volume, yeah? No volume.
Just explain what you're doing.
Yeah. So if you guys, yeah, you'll have to go on my Facebook page. I actually had the Belmont call going right here. Secretariat is widening. He's moving like a tremendous machine. So here we go. We're going up to Albany. We got him set up at Saratoga. Alice Margaret was there. And we met Cody with Cody's Wish. He came to the monument as well. Now I have to tell you, our dog got lame on this trip, and we made an emergency trip to the veterinarian at 3:15 today. Otherwise, I would have finished up with a couple more slides. But she's fine. Thank you guys for coming out. Sorry that was kind of long here. Not too bad. 8:20. Michael says, oh, Michael's got the maquette. So he's going to put the maquette, that's the smallest one. He'll put it on the trailer so at least you can see how I started the small version. Are we good? We're great. We love you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. You can now go outside for further opportunities with the sculpture and go banner.